Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 109 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom. I'm getting cuter every minute, Haggis.
Somebody's always giving me guns. That was my favorite line in the entire movie. I loved it.
Second, writer, actor, and director, Kyle. A tramp from a long line of tramps, fine.
Did you know my family history motto? Okay, I got a kind of a long introduction. You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. There he stood, 6'3" in black biker boots and nothing else, naked, the way he was when God pulled him out of the dumpster. He had two legs that went all the way up and made an ass out of themselves. And I knew I wanted to be with him, so I had to take care of his wife. Well, I put her in a driverless car and I set the GPS for the bottom of the ocean. And I knew we were on this trolley car together. And the next stop was the boneyard.
Wow. Raymond Chandler is saluting you, sir.
Thanks. That's about you, Mike.
I figured once the biker boots hit, I figured.
You know it.
Yeah, modern
I am flattered. Thank you,
You
Kyle.
should be.
Third, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew. I enjoyed your drink as much as you did, sir. Zumwalt.
She tried to sit on my lap while I was standing up. Yeah, see? We're going to take him to the big boss, know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, they never catch me, coppers.
Fourth, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, Gabriel. Smells like honeysuckle.
They say all native Californians come from Iowa.
Yeah. A lot of us out there.
I liked the reference to Iowa.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't you always get a little charge when you hear someone say it? And then you're like, oh, this was 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and then, if they're not saying it in necessarily an insulting way either.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Generally, it's in an insulting way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially after this last
Caucus.
political
Yeah.
season. Yeah. Kind of the butt of a lot of jokes.
Yep. All right.
And rightfully so.
Let's poke the monkey, find out what we're talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, private dicks and insurance investigators, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two black and white classics go toe-to-toe in this film noir fracas. In the first quarter, from 1944, written by Raymond Chandler and directed by Billy Wilder. Starring Fred McMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Edward G. Robinson. Double Indemnity. In the second quarter, from 1946, written by William Faulkner and directed by Howard Hawks. Starring Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, and John
Okay, fellas, this is a reminder and just a little heads up to our listeners. We're actually going to try something new this month, and we're going to put a 15-minute limit on our rounds. We're going to see how that works for us.
That's what we're doing?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I'll put my pants back. Put my pants back on. Sorry.
Because a lot of times we get into it a lot, and our rounds sometimes take 40 minutes, 15 minutes of a show. So we're going to try and shorten it up, and hopefully this works. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you don't like it, you can send all your hate mail to at Tom Haggis. And if you do like you can send it all to at Kyle Fine. So
I don't want your praise either.
Without further ado, let's start our first round, which is writing.
Wait, is the timer going now? Oh, shit.
Yep.
I'm waffling. Well, listen to me filibuster.
All right. Minus 14 minutes.
Oh, good Lord. Writing. Okay, so there's a hell of a lot of talent involved in writing these movies. Like a lot of talent. Reading the credits of who's responsible for writing these books and movies is like reading a who's who of, early noir and filmmaking. William Faulkner was involved in some of this stuff, and Raymond Chandler, and that's pretty crazy. That being said, in my opinion, there's one movie that has a decent story that makes sense. You may not always find it completely fascinating, but I found the crime in Double Indemnity much more cohesive and followable. That's not a real word. It's almost impossible to understand what's truly going on in The Big Sleep because I feel like there are big parts of the story missing, or things that Philip Marlowe knows that he will not share with the audience, which is really frustrating. And the story becomes really convoluted and, in my opinion, ultimately uninteresting on who's blackmailing who. Like, that's really kind of not the point of the movie at a certain place, a certain time. It just becomes about watching Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall act and do, interesting stuff and deliver really cool dialogue. But Double Indemnity had a stronger through line, and the crime was much more interesting. I enjoyed the setup around it, the planning of it, the execution of it, and a special shout out to my favorite part of these movies, which was Key's monologue about, looking through his tomes and figuring out the percentages of how people die, like looking at actuarial tables. I thought that was an awesome monologue. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys now.
It was well delivered, too. Yeah.
I'm going to respectfully agree.
Ooh, don't you dare, you son of a bitch.
Damn it.
I would definitely say that I followed the story actually in Double Indemnity in that one. I know Double Indemnity.
We just call it DI from now on.
Oh, okay.
It's easier for everybody. I can't say
DI. Yeah. Well, anyways, I found that to be quite a bit easier to follow. The story was much simpler, but to be fair, I enjoy the dialogue and the way that it was delivered and the chattiness for all of The Big Sleep so much better. Like the dialogue was fun and witty and humorous throughout the whole thing, and it kind of just went back and forth with DI as much as The Big Sleep was just nailed it every time. I was following the crime. I was actually following the mystery. I was following the story. And then we get to the end and I was like, wait a minute, what? So I did get a little bit lost and I had to rewatch the ending to kind of catch where all the connections were. And I'm still unsure. But overall, the dialogue is what got me with The Big Sleep. So I will agree with you, Kyle.
Yeah, I think The Big Sleep was almost kind of like pre-Tarantino. The dialogue was fantastic.
Ugh.
I can't tell you how many times I like laughed out loud at the dialogue. I'm like, oh, that is so good. You know, like that line you said at the beginning, you know, she tried to sit in my lap when I was standing up. And there's just so much great dialogue. And I definitely have to give the edge to The Big Sleep for the dialogue. But like Kyle said, the plotting is a little bit confusing, and it is hard to keep track of everything that's going on in it. Whereas, with DI is very classic noir. I suppose these both are, but DI has the whole voiceover thing kind of explaining what's going on. And I thought the device where he was actually dictating into that recorder, that was kind of interesting. It motivated the reason why he's doing voiceover explaining everything. Because a lot of times that seems like, okay, well, you're just telling me what I need to know. Instead of showing me and letting me figure it out, you're just telling me. But I did like how they used that recorder as a way to kind of justify the voiceover. And by the way, my dad actually had or still has one of those with the wax.
Wow.
They're like wax cylinders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He's got recordings, I think, maybe of himself as a child.
Wow.
On those wax cylinders, which is really kind of cool.
Last time with Private Investigator Neff. That kind of thing. That's the narration that you hate.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna disagree with all three of you, and I thought that the story in Big Sleep was better than the story in Double Indemnity. I mean, there are parts in Double Indemnity where there's not much happening. They do a really good job of you can kind of get like the noose tightening around their neck. But you guys said the dialogue in Big Sleep was better, and it definitely was. There are parts of Double Indemnity, where Neff is flirting at the beginning. It's got some really great dialogue in it. And Edgar G. Robinson's Keys stuff is really good, but I don't know. I guess I wasn't sure that I hadn't seen Big Sleep before he did this, and I wasn't sure that there were movies that were this kind of complex and this much of a brain exercise back then. And I thought it was really refreshing, because Double Indemnity is such a straightforward film, and I mean, kudos for them for taking a book like Big Sleep and putting in all the plots and twists and backstabbing and stuff, and having a little bit of faith in your audience to do it and understand what's going on. So I think of that measure, and I will watch both of these a lot in the future. But I think Big Sleep is fun because I'll go back and be able to catch more of the detail and kind of dig more into the mystery about what's going on. So
it's interesting. Well, we can save this for the overall category, but I think it's interesting when you talk about how the audiences. I think the audiences for these films at that time were very different than modern moviegoers, and I think that'll be an interesting topic for.
Right. So then the question is, what came first, the dumbed down movies or the dumbed down audience? Did the audience's expectations evolve or devolve as movies got dumber and dumber? Literally, or was it that people were going to see these really smart movies, so they started making less movies? I don't really know. It is hard to know. But, if the 1970s tell us anything, that there was this time between then and now where people could handle very complex and thematically rich movies that didn't just come out and tell you what was happening. I mean, in my mind, every movie in the 1970s is 3.5 hours long.
Right. I was actually kind of surprised at how long these were. But
I love
that's probably for later on.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead. We're just
I love movies that don't hold the audience's hand. That's one of my favorite things about cinema is like trusting your audience. But I felt like The Big Sleep didn't give you enough to follow it. Like, you have to give me enough to be interested and be in the story with you. If you just keep secrets and don't let me in on anything about what's going on, and I feel like parts of your plot are missing or have been cut or never explained, that's when it starts to get frustrating. Double Indemnity was slow in places for sure. But the plot and the story structure was pretty sound, even though it drug.
Well, and then, I really felt a lot more tension with Double Indemnity. Like when the people are starting to figure it out and they're getting closer and closer to like revealing that it's them, and you know, I personally felt more tension. You know, I don't know that I felt more interest, but I was like more nervous about, they're going to figure it out. How are they going to get out of this? That kind of thing. So, I don't know.
You're right, and there's parts in Big Sleep where you're just kind of like you're not sure where the tension is coming from, and it's kind of interesting because these two movies are while they're both film noir, they're very different in how they approach the stories, and you know whereas Double Indemnity kind of just tells you a very basic story, Big Sleep really likes to dig into the details and keep you guessing, and you feel more. Okay, so you're kind of with Neff in Double Indemnity. You know, you're with the guy that perpetrated the crime, and he's the guy that you're following along with. But obviously, in Big Sleep, we're tagging along with Philip Marlowe, and we're trying to solve the crime with him. And that's one reason why they're so different in terms of, yeah, we know who did it, we were there, we saw it. Whereas with Big Sleep, it's much more complicated. So.
Yeah,
and I think I'm a puzzle guy. I would much rather hang out with the detective and try and put everything together, and then than the other way around. Damn straight.
4 minutes,
votes right there.
40 seconds.
4 votes for Big Sleep.
4 minutes.
I just got you all to switch, didn't I?
This will probably fall in the acting category too. But
Is
I
it
think
about the actors?
it is.
If it's about the actors, it falls in the actor.
So
category.
I'll wait. It's related to the story. It's related to the storytelling, but it's in how it's portrayed.
We have some awkward pauses. Fill it in, and that's fine.
We don't have to go full 15 minutes.
We don't have to go 15. Yeah. Now I kind of got pressure. You know, like my chest is. I'm feeling tension now.
We got to fill this out.
Do you guys want to add anything else?
I'm good.
Good?
Yeah, I'm sure you've got 4 or 5 minutes of trivia.
The 40s.
All right. Kyle, what do you vote? Did we lose Kyle? Oh, my God. They got him. I knew it.
It appears to be online.
He just texted me. He said, "Put one vote in for Big Sleep."
Liar.
Hey,
I'm reading off my phone. It says,
"Text the group, Kyle. Text the group."
My mic isn't working.
Completely changed my mind. Tom has completely changed my mind. Please do 1 vote for Big Sleep.
Tom is brilliant.
Yeah. And then it says Jerk Chicken 69. I think that's him. That's him, right?
Oh, he laughed. Good try. Good try.
Chicken.
Nice
Chicken.
One.
What? I don't know.
Jerk sitting.
Choke jerkin. Choke.
Jerk sitting.
I really don't think we need to try that hard to remember.
Indemnity. Double indemnity. Double indemnity.
Well, this just goes against the 15 minutes where we talk about Kyle sex. So.
Yeah. Yep. All right,
Double
Tom, what do you vote?
indemnity.
I am voting for Big Sleep.
All right, Gabe.
I think I'm going to go with Big Sleep because the dialogue is fantastic.
The Big Sleep.
The Big Sleep, yes.
All right, Andrew.
I am also going to vote for The Big Sleep because the dialogue was just so fantastic, and I did enjoy the story. It just wasn't as simple as Double Indemnity, but
you
Big
got
Sleep all the way. I know. I've been practicing.
Double Indemnity. Double Indemnity.
Oh, God, it's going to get me now.
Double Indemnity. Double Indemnity.
All right. Well, while we wait to try and get Kyle back, I will hit you guys up with some trivia, and then we'll get his vote. Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler did not get along whilst writing the script for Double Indemnity, a process that was apparently filled with arguments.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Wow.
I got your vote in, Kyle.
No, you did not. I want Double Indemnity, Tom. Don't you lie to me. I can hear you.
All right, counted. So Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler did not get along while writing the script for Double Indemnity, a process that was apparently filled with arguments. Wilder claimed that he flaunted his womanizing ability at the time just to torment the sexually repressed Chandler, even through this fighting, the two still experience passionate love making from time to time, usually while the camera was rolling. I believe Amanda messed with my notes.
Are you kidding me?
I was like, what are we talking about?
Oh my God!
Wow, the
remember
40s
seeing
were
those
a
two.
lot different.
Oh my God. She's done it to everyone now that I look at it. Oh,
Yeah, Femme Fatales will do that, dude.
they will.
That is trivia.
So yeah,
Nobody knew that.
there was a ton of trivia about how much Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler did not like each other, like at all. And it
She
said
did a
that-
whole bunch of those.
She did. She's added to all my trivia that I
I
that
think
I
you
had
just
up.
need to read them all as if they're fact.
Okay,
I honestly
will.
do.
I will. I will. And we'll see if we can figure it out. All right. William Faulkner
Well,
never
you just told
adjusted.
us they're all fake.
William Faulkner never adjusted to life in Hollywood. While working on the script for The Big Sleep, he told Howard Hawks that the studio atmosphere was stifling him and asked if he could work at home. Hawks agreed. After a few days without hearing from the writer, Hawks called his hotel only to learn that Faulkner had checked out and gone back to his native Mississippi. When Hawks called him, Faulkner protested, quote, "Well, you said I could go home and write, didn't you, asshat?"
Well, that name goes back further than I thought.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I believe that's a direct quote. So,
Listeners, what do you think is true?
well, I believe everything is true except for the last lines.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So-
Listeners, what do you think?
It's choose your own adventure time on Cinesmack.
All right. Make your own trivia.
Oh, all right. Let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
I like Humphrey Bogart. I know that he kind of gets some flack sometimes for kind of playing the same type of character in his movies, that there isn't a whole lot of difference in it. In his different performances, he's always kind of playing this embodiment of Humphrey Bogart. But after seeing a few of his movies, there are those ones. I think African Queen's one, but there's some of them. He just looks like he is having a lot of fun with the role, even in the times when, like, he's getting punched in the face. And he really looks like he's having a good time. And I don't know if it's because Laura McCall's in the movie with him, but there's definitely something to his performance. And the big word that I took away from watching these two movies and comparing and then contrasting them is chemistry. I felt like Laura McCall and Humphrey Bogart, you could tell that there was something else going on between the two of them, because they had really great chemistry. And they just clicked on stage in a way that you don't, you see. I think you see it more now. I think some people are a lot better at faking it now that they've had a chance to kind of look back on 100 years of film. But I did not see that with Fred McMurray and was it Marlene Dietrich? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't feel like I didn't kind of understand the switch. Like, Fred McMurray just like falls for her way too easily, and I don't know. I like the way Laura McCall kind of works for it in The Big Sleep, and part of that's the script, but that's part of the thing with what I didn't like with Double Indemnity is that just this, it's just like, hey, we love each other, let's kill your old man, and I just like, I don't know. And if there had been that chemistry, if there was this spark, this this love at first sight kind of thing, then I would believe it more in Double Indemnity. But they really start off just using each other to get what they want, whether it's a dead husband or her vagina.
Yeah, I
Isn't
know
that
what you're
the
saying
same
about.
thing?
Well, depends on who you're asking. So yeah, I'm with you on chemistry for sure. There's a difference in these two movies. I feel like Double Indemnity is a off-brand serial version of The Big Sleep when it comes to the main characters. Humphrey Bogart is just a better version of the noir lead man than Fred McMurray. Not that he's bad, but Humphrey Bogart is, superior in my opinion. And Lauren Bacall, the same for the female actress. Noir films notoriously set the world record for the shortest amount of time to decide you're going to sleep with someone and commit any number of crimes for them. And I think the motivation that's barely explained in Double Indemnity, where Fred McMurray, or Neff, Walter Neff, I should say, is interested in whether he can get away with this because he knows insurance from the inside out. I think he mentions that like once, and I'm like, that's a really interesting idea. Instead, you fell in love with this married woman who you don't know, and you pretty much tried to get her to sleep with you 3 minutes after you walked in the house. That's kind of crazy. So Fred McMurray wasn't bad. I was surprised at how well he was because I know him as the dad for my 3 sons just from watching Nick at Night when I was a kid. Like, that's all I know. So I didn't know he was, in movies like this, did stuff like this. And I feel like the supporting characters in Double Indemnity were pretty good, especially Keys. Keys was really good. But they're so hit or miss with whether they're good or bad. And that's kind of the same in The Big Sleep too. There are a lot of good performances and good supporting performances. Some of the henchmen and some of the fight scenes too were just almost like holy shit, really? Yeah. Like really, really low quality stuff. But you have to do what you can only do what you have, what you can work with. And back then the fight choreography wasn't through the roof like it is now. But that being said, Humphrey Bogart is just a plain movie star. He looks effortless on the screen. He looks natural. It's just, that's what he's really good at. And whether he's a great actor or not, we can debate, but he's a bona fide movie star and acts like one and has charisma and takes up the screen. So yeah, it was really interesting to watch them both work. Very different sorts of performances, I think, in 2 similar-ish movies. Both, fast talking noir guys, but there were better and worse, in my opinion.
Oh my God! Did I say? I'm sorry. I said Marlene Dietrich. I meant Barbara Stanwyck. Sorry. My apologies to the Stanwyck family.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that. Now you got me completely off track.
Sorry.
That's okay. Shit. I got to go back to my notes. Someone else. Go.
That's what he was trying to do. It worked. You fell for it.
Go back. Yeah. Go. Somebody.
Like Kyle was saying, I think Bogart definitely has the tough guy noir character kind of down. But the other thing about him is he adds certain subtleties to the character. It not only, he's got great delivery of that fantastic dialogue, but he adds little things to his performance where he's, when he's thinking about something or he's figuring something out, he's grabbing his earlobe, he's touching his ear, and they're just like these subtle, things that he adds to the character that fill it out so much more than just reading great dialogue. Because I felt at times that Fred McMurray was just kind of reading. I didn't dislike him. I liked his character, but I think I'm with Kyle too in that it was unusual for me to see him in that kind of, sexualized bad guy kind of character. It's like, oh, this doesn't fit from what my memory of Fred McMurray. But I thought he was good, but I did feel like sometimes he was just kind of delivering the lines without adding any depth to them.
Yeah, he could be monotone at times.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's a big deal. It's also interesting to see, what kind of qualified as decent acting at that time. Again, I think once we get to later categories, I think we'll talk about audiences a lot and what audiences thought of as decent acting and would tolerate in a movie. Because nowadays, even if a side character acted as stiff as some of these characters do, we might be like, oh, that's terrible, But I was pretty forgiving on these. I knew it was a different time, and that I wasn't going to expect the same level of like method acting. It's not like we've got like Daniel Day-Lewis or something in one of these.
Denzel Washington.
Or Denzel Washington, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I would argue that Denzel Washington is our Humphrey Bogart right now. I think
he does the same thing in every movie.
He does the same thing in a lot of his movies, and
but he's still inherently likable.
Inherently likable.
Yeah.
Gabe has web pages for both of them. So.
Interesting.
I don't yet, but I will now. Yeah.
Well, I just took bogielove.com, so you're gonna have to find another one.
Oh.
I want to second that. I would say that one of the biggest things about Bogart and the way that he delivers his lines is it's quick, it's witted, and it seems very natural. Like he just seems like this quick-witted guy that you're just like, oh, you're a clever son of a bitch. and he has a way of saying things and the way of delivering the way that he is explaining the situation or what he's thinking, and in just a really fascinating way to get enough information out of the person that he's talking to. And it was just so, he's calm, he's collect in all the situations. And I realize that's part of the writing and that's the story, but man, he's just really good at delivering that. That's my second, because the rest of it, you guys, we've talked a lot about the big one that I was going to jump in that I totally got off kilter because you mentioned Barbara Stanwyck, was that there is a very, very explicit look to women in the 1940s, not just their style, from their hair to their bras to seriously though.
Ooh.
Like,
I know. If you weren't going to mention it, I was.
Their clothes, but also the way they act. Like there's a lot of the damsel in distress, the blue-eyed, oh, it's a man. Oh. Right away. It's really fascinating to watch now, and I realized that potentially that is how they all were. They were. Oh, well, thank you. It is very it is very much, there is just in both movies so many similarities of how the women act comparatively to each other, and it has to be the style, either the style of movie or the years, that it was in the 40s, and that's just what people expected from women actresses. I'm not sure, but that was about the only other thing in the acting category that I don't think we brought up yet. So I don't want to rehash everything, but the women of the 40s, whew, something else.
I think The Big Sleep has stronger female characters than Double Indemnity, where the character.
I agree.
Yeah, they're either kind of tizzy younger women who are making bad life decisions or black widows. But they have a lot more nuance to them in The Big Sleep, and they're given more agency over what they want, and they're not so helpless. They do confound Philip Marlowe a bit trying to figure them out, and they play on his level. They're not subservient to him. And I liked that they had jobs. Like, how many times in a movie in the 40s or 30s you're thinking, okay, he's going to go into a bookstore. Well, okay, so the clerk is either going to be a really ditzy woman who really wants to sleep with him, or a guy, because they're not going to cast a woman there who won't sleep with him. And maybe she did. She probably did, right? But she seemed smart and had agency about it and was involved in the conversation. She was not like being smitten by him. They seemed to be in it together. And then the female taxi driver I thought was interesting, because that wasn't a role that was just like, here's a lady to throw herself at him. She's just a normal working taxi driver who has a funny joke and is in the scene with him. And I enjoyed that.
I wanted more of her. I wanted more.
Yeah, I thought she was interesting.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that, if somebody would have drugged or liquored up or got high or whatever, Carmen these days, they would have gone to jail.
Yeah.
They all just, oh yeah, she does it all the time. It's no big deal.
He's always getting high while guys are getting shot. We're taking
Yeah.
pictures with this
With her and all
face
this.
camera.
No big deal.
Yeah, put her to bed.
That's the girl, and girls do that.
Well, in the taxi cab and the bookstore scene, they're smaller parts, but Humphrey Bogart still has chemistry with those two women.
Absolutely.
And the scenes are great, and they're short, and you want more. And I mean, I think that I'm curious as to if that was part of Humphrey Bogart's appeal with the studios back in the day. Was it because they're like, I don't know, throw him in there with a cup of yogurt and let's see what happens? That he can pull chemistry out of anybody. He was just that kind of actor, or were they just this good? Were they that good? I don't know.
I don't know, that line where he's like, should I call you? Or she said, you can call me anytime. He said, day or night. And she goes, call me at night. I work during the day. I was like,
That was a good line.
Oh,
That's a great line.
beautiful.
Again,
That's a line that your hero usually has towards a female and not the other way around.
Yes.
So I love that. Yeah, I love them switching that around.
Oh, it was so great. So great.
That was great.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I read the script. Was the line when she said it's getting wet out there and he said, I'd rather get wet in here? Was that in the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. Okay.
Because he had whiskey in. Oh no, maybe it wasn't because I remember he had rye in his pocket. But I remember thinking in my head, he's going to say that. If I were him, I'd say that.
It's in the. Okay, so I watched it and I loved all the lines so much. I went back through and I read the script, and now I can't remember what was in the movie and what wasn't. So in the original script, she says it's getting wet out there, and he says, I'd rather get wet in here. And so I was like, oh, and now I don't remember if that was in the movie or not.
I can't remember if she said it or I just thought it in my head. But then he says, I've got a nice rye in my pocket, and then they drink.
I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, the female characters. I think female characters in noir films are known to be more independent, stronger, and a little bit less predictable than female characters in movies of any other genre from any other time. 5 minutes.
15 minutes are up.
15. Sorry. Yeah.
I like where you were going with that, Gabe. But
I know, I did too.
I agree. Usually women in noir films are not the damsel in distresses that they are in adventure films, right?
Hey!
Right.
I thought you were going to cut us off at 15. Now you're going over and breaking your own rules. Oh!
He's the host.
Now it's anarchy.
I can do what
part
I
of the
want.
segue. He's just
All right, Tom, what do you vote?
Big Sleep.
Gabe?
yeah, I
does
think
say
it for me too.
He does say I'd rather get wet in here.
Andrew?
That's nasty.
That's pretty provocative.
Yeah.
And it got past the
nasty
censors.
stuff.
If I said that to a girl now, I'd never be president.
Wait,
do you
you
mean?
don't know that.
Yeah, you don't know that.
You don't know that.
This is not 2016. This is a new era.
Andrew.
We're not allowed to touch it.
You'd go for 2 terms, Tom.
The big
Oh,
sleep.
two-term Tom.
I'll just shove it in.
Two-term Tom. Kyle.
Yeah, give me brand name Bogart. I'll take the big sleep.
All right.
Two-term Tom. Oh, that's going on a poster.
Due to Humphrey Bogart's affair with co-star Lauren Bacall, his marital problems escalated during filming. His drinking often resulted in his being unable to work. 3 months after The Big Sleep was finished, Bacall and Bogart were married. And then this was added in a lavish ceremony at Kim Kardashian's Beverly Hills home.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I totally
Yeah.
I buy that.
Yep.
So they actually drank for real?
Oh, there are quite a few little pieces of trivia about Bogart being dressed down by Howard Hawks because he would just show up blitzed. Like he drank a lot. And eventually they worked it out to where Bogart would be allowed to have one beer at lunch.
As opposed to
like 5 drinks.
Speaking of beer, Fred McMurray gets a beer at a drive-in.
He does.
Double Indemnity. And I was like, what the fuck? Just bring a beer to your car?
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
that's happening nowadays too. You can get carry out alcohol now.
That's true. We're back in the 30s.
It's not all
40s.
bad.
Barbara Stanwyck.
Go ahead.
Andrew, what were you going to say?
I find it really fascinating that on set that they would actually allow or give them instead of prop whiskey, actually real whiskey or real whatever.
Well,
to have them drink on set. That
no, it doesn't
as a
say.
Director.
It doesn't say that it was from the props. It's saying that like he probably had it at his trailer
on his own.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, they do that now. Guys show up on set with blow on their nose. Come on, and they just tell everyone it's makeup powder.
Barbara Stanwyck was the first choice to play Phyllis, but she was unnerved when seeing the role of a ruthless killer. When she expressed her concern to Billy Wilder, he asked her, and by the way, this is true. This is not something that Amanda messed with. He said, quote, "Are you a mouse or an actress?" End quote.
Wow.
And she took it. So there you go. All right. Third round.
Damn.
Directing.
I think the directing was pretty solid on both of these. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember. I feel like with The Big Sleep, it felt a little more what I think of as noirish to me. The lighting was a little bit more dramatic in most cases, and yeah, I just felt like, good performances generally out of that. The actors, I don't know. I'm not sure where to go with this. You know, I think maybe with The Big Sleep, though, could have the director could have maybe made it a little bit more understandable plot-wise with some of the editing choices. I don't know. Help me out, guys. I'm kind of floundering here. I think both are competently directed, and both fall, very squarely into the noir category with the great lighting, dark characters, and that kind of thing. Yeah. But
whenever I watch movies from this era, I always have to remind myself, okay, they don't have special effects. They don't have crazy camera rigs. They can't do all those things that we take for granted now in movies. So how do they pace? How do they block? How do they shoot and light these things that they know are going to be shown in black and white? And for me, Big Sleep got me on board right away, because when he comes to the house and they go to the greenhouse, I love the way that set looks. I love the coloring, the contrast between light and dark, and the way they block that, and that conversation's back and forth. And I was like, okay, I'm in on this. If this is your style, I like it. And it keeps that up through most of the movie. My only issue with the directing, and I would just say from a choice directors make when they choose what goes in their film, is in The Big Sleep, I felt like the focus became more and more on Bacall and Humphrey Bogart, as opposed to the actual story that was going on and the mystery we were investigating. And I'm sure at the time it was a big deal because they were big movie stars. And so you needed to put as much of them as you could in. But I think it did some disservice to the story at certain points, because it was just, it bogged things down, and I wanted to see it keep moving and come to a satisfactory and interesting conclusion instead of just feeling kind of jumbled. But the way it's shot, blocked, lit, everything, I thought was awesome. And I am a sucker for that sort of noir dissolve where you see one scene coming up through the other as they're moving from place to place. I love that. And I loved in The Big Sleep and in Double Indemnity they have to tell you the story in a much simpler way because they don't really want to do on-screen graphics or have crazy camera rigs and stuff. So they show you a name of a building or a street intersection or whatever, and you just get it intuitively. Your mind goes, okay, here's where I am now. And it makes it so easy and clean to follow the story. And that's something I think gets lost a lot now in modern filmmaking is everybody thinks there has to be a super creative or blow you away method to deliver their information. Well, I find it really satisfying when it's simple and you get the idea and you just let the story happen. And noir films and older films, I think, are excellent at this because that's the way they have to communicate to the audience. And they didn't feel like they had to pull out all these crazy tricks, just simple storytelling. And I think both of them did really well. There was a chunk in Double Indemnity that I thought really felt like a Hitchcock film where he's on the phone figuring out what color suit he's going to wear while Keyes is in there talking. And he's talking about how he wrapped up his foot and they're going through the crime. I thought, man, this feels very Hitchcock. Like he keeps keeping his face in the shadows and there are a lot of ancillary characters. They're talking to each other, as characters and stuff. And I thought, oh, this is really good. So I really enjoyed that stuff. I thought both these movies were very well directed and by very talented and rightfully noteworthy directors. I mean, knowing the tools they had to work with, telling these complex stories very simply and in a way that's easy to follow, and making it beautiful in black and white when you don't have all the color palette and all these other choices, I think is a real skill and a talent a lot of people don't possess anymore. And so I love to see them see it done well like this.
So you don't like it when movies do Atlanta, Georgia, United States of America as an overlay?
In huge font with a typewriter sound, and it's all in digital green and shit. No, you don't need to do that.
Atlanta, Georgia, United States of America, as opposed to Atlanta, Georgia,
all the other
China.
Atlanta, Georgias. I know. I love these movies for their simplicity and their storytelling that way. It tickles me watching these types of movies. I really enjoy it.
I do you have Hitchcock stuff in your trivia, Mike?
I do have trivia, but nothing with Hitchcock in it.
So Hitchcock was a huge fan of Double Indemnity, and apparently after he saw it, he wrote a note to Billy Wilder and said that after watching Double Indemnity, like the movie world now revolves around two words, Billy Wilder. And I can't even imagine what it'd be like to get that note. But
from Hitchcock.
And this, I mean, he had just finished Spellbound and Lifeboat. So I mean, he was really coming into like really his golden era with, Dial In for Murder and Rear Window over the next 10 years, To Catch a Thief. So
my God.
I mean, it was what a great time for movies, but
Wow.
But I love Billy Wilder and I love Howard Hawks and Billy Wilder does. I think Billy Wilder does a better job. I know this can kind of go against what we said during screenwriting, but I think Billy Wilder does a better job of telling you a story. His movie. If I blindly pick a movie off my shelf, it's more likely to be a Billy Wilder movie than a Howard Hawks movie, just because he tells stories in a very fun and entertaining way, and he does that with this. But Howard Hawks, there's details in Double Indemnity. There's a lot of little tiny things throughout Double Indemnity that if you lose a shot, then suddenly like, oh, was that her? I didn't know that. Like, just him looking in at the car's registration. Just a little detail like that. If he had forgotten to do that or that didn't make the edit, then the entire thing just comes unraveled like a sweater. And it's amazing his attention to detail throughout this process and putting a complicated story like this together.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up the whole Hitchcock thing because the scene actually in The Big Sleep when he's in the office and he is looking through and Jonesy's sitting there on the couch and all you see is a silhouette and they're talking. I was like, oh, that's such a Hitchcock thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
if
funny
they never would have revealed if they would have revealed who the guy was, that would have been a very Hitchcock move. Yeah.
I was waiting for him to just sit by the filing cabinet and listen to him and they would never show what was actually going on until the very end. I was waiting and then they cut in and I was like, oh, dang. But I thought the same thing during that scene too in The Big Sleep. So it's interesting that we had similar mindsets. Uh-oh, Kyle, son of a bitch.
We've both watched a lot of movies. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna directing wise, I don't really have a lot to add because you guys, I agree with both sides of this. They were both beautifully done. The only thing that I thought was humorous to me that I don't know if we talk about a lot, but a lot of the sound effects just cracked me up. And I realized it was a time period, but like the thunder before it started raining, the quickness of the rain, like all of a sudden they're inside and then they see a flash of lightning and it's pouring rain all of a sudden. That kind of stuff just made it just awesome. Like, I think it's that almost nostalgia feel, even though I wasn't, alive in the 40s, I mean, in this body, but it almost had this nostalgic filmmaking. Like, I was back almost at film school watching some of these older movies, learning from the greats, and you just kind of look and you're like, everyone talks about the Wilhelm scream, but just some of the effects and the way that those simplicity things that Kyle mentioned, the way they're shot, it feels nostalgic, even though, it's a bad word for how it makes me feel, but watching them, it's almost nostalgic feeling because it's just so, I don't know, goose pimply. I don't know. It's just fun to me. So
you feel like you're being let in on the secret of filmmaking of like, oh, this is how you deliver information. And you see it and you go, that's really clever. That's super clever. And it almost makes you proud and excited. You're like, God damn, that's clever. I like it.
And you think back at the times you've done it and go, shit, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I didn't do that right. I know when you watch masters do it, you go, oh, that was so simple. Why did I make it so hard?
Yeah, why did I make this? Yeah, that was, So I appreciate that thought process. God, that's again, Kyle, son of a bitch.
We're on the same cycle. Well, I got to shout out one scene that
our men's
we've
synced.
4.5 minutes.
So one scene I got to shout out in Big Sleep when he's sitting at the counter in the diner counting his change, and he's rubbing his ear thinking about something, and then the waitress walks behind him and turns a light that goes on above his head, and then he gets an idea and goes to the phone and makes a phone call. I thought that was brilliant. I love that visual storytelling. Yeah, he's sitting there thinking, rubbing his ear, counting change on the counter, and then the lady walks behind him, 10 feet behind him, and turns the light on because it's getting dark outside. Yep. As soon as that light goes on, he looks up like he has an idea. Then he goes to the phone and makes a call. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. That's so clever.
And then he goes to the phone and he picks it up and he's like, 55 cents? Wow.
Signs on the wall for eggs and bacon for 45 cents. So like, oh, God.
and the fact that he actually in that same scene he puts the phone down, walks over, asks the waitress or the lady at the bar, he's like, do you got a light? And a match, and she lights his cigarette. He walks back and he just picks up where he left off of the conversation.
Well, I also wonder too about the structure of these films and if this was kind of unique, especially Double Indemnity, where it kind of starts out at the end, and then you work back through. So I would give credit to Double Indemnity for structuring the story a little bit differently, and it may have actually benefited from doing that a little bit more. Telling that story a little bit more out of order may have actually made that story more interesting. Whereas A Big Sleep is pretty straightforward structure-wise. It's beginning to end. Pretty much, you don't get a lot of like moving around, but I feel like film noir, and I don't know if this is true. Maybe you guys can enlighten me at some point. But I feel like film noir introduced a lot of that kind of concept, where you start somewhere in the middle or the end of the story, and then jump back in time. And so I give some credit to Double Indemnity for that structure.
What a great, wonderful lead in to overall. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just wanted to get that in the 37 seconds that I had left.
Sure. You have 2 minutes left.
It's really interesting. I wonder what if we look back at the history when those narrative twists and turns started coming around. I do know noir seems to have this thing where it wants to get characters in an enclosed space so they can have their back and forth. So there's a lot of walk into a building, something's going on outside, we can't leave right now, let's have a conversation. Walk into a room, something's going on outside, let's have a conversation. So they get that back and forth between two characters. So they do that quite a bit. Yeah, it's really interesting the way they choose to tell these stories. I think it's really creative.
Well, and to your point, I think it's interesting how he did start at the end, because normally, like in today's movies telling, that's one of my biggest things I hate, is movie that starts off at the end of the movie and then it cuts and it's like 17 minutes earlier and you watch the rest of the movie and then you get back to where they're, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just, maybe it's the way they do it. This one didn't bother me when he did it. Like this one seemed natural and it flowed well. But the way that people are doing it today seems just so, and I don't know if they're trying to copy it or if it's, I don't know. It's one of I just do not like it in the way that people are doing it today. But this one was, I don't know. It didn't bother me.
It's like a structure for a sitcom or like a TV show. You know, if your TV show goes more than 2 seasons, you have to have one episode where it starts at the end and then how did we get here? You got to have one where people are trapped in a room or an elevator. You got to have, room with misconnections or misunderstanding. Like there are all these tropes and they just work them in. So it's just become a trope thing. We start at the end and then 17 minutes earlier.
And it's just
all right.
I just don't like
That's it. 15 minutes are up. Gabe, how do you vote?
I think in this round I'm going to go with Double Indemnity because of that thing we were just talking about, the structure and starting at the end.
All right, Andrew.
I'm going to go with The Big Sleep just because the lighting and some of the shots and the way they were set up.
Okie dokie, Kyle.
Yeah, I want to give Double Indemnity a lot of credit, especially for that middle section, the actual crime section. I thought was really well done, but I got to go with The Big Sleep.
And Timothy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Big Sleep. I think Howard Hawks had a big load to carry, and he delivered.
Agreed. All right. Warner Brothers studio chief Jack L. Warner gave Howard Hawks $50,000 to purchase the rights for The Big Sleep. Hawks bought the rights for $5,000 and pocketed the rest. According to film historian John Tuska, the purchase price was actually $10,000. But yeah, he pocketed the
still
rest
a tiny
of the
profit.
That's awesome.
Borderline criminal.
Double Indemnity was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, but lost out to Going My Way. Billy Wilder was so seriously annoyed at Leo McCarey's sweep that when McCarey's name was called for Best Director, Wilder stuck his foot out into the aisle, tripping McCarey up. Wilder would get his revenge the following year when The Lost Weekend won 4 Oscars, while McCarey's The Bells of St. Mary's only picked up 1. So yeah, he actually tripped him on his way up to get an award.
Like, can you imagine the social media outcry if that were to happen today?
Oh my God!
God, they should though. Come on, pump some life into it.
But I mean,
I agree.
Because what?
They should fist fight.
Jennifer. Oh my God.
Lawrence?
Hunger Games chick. Yeah, Lawrence. I mean, she's tripped like 3 times on the red carpet, once going up stage while she was getting an Oscar. And that was like the biggest news of the entire show.
Yep.
I don't know. People don't trip more often wearing shoes like that and dresses
and
like
the dresses,
that. Jesus.
yeah, I know.
Crazy.
All right. 4th
I
and
would
final
like to see a
round.
clip of that.
So would I. 4th and final round overall.
I don't want to rehash because we do that a lot. So I'm going to talk about some of the bigger picture stuff. Pun intended. Double Indemnity? No.
Yeah,
You
nailed
had
it.
You had it.
Woohoo! So Double Indemnity. Again, we've talked about the starting at the very, very end of the story and working its way back. I'm not sure if this was the very first movie that's ever done that. I'm sure someone else probably before. I mean, I I wouldn't think it was, but felt that it was a clever way to actually get him into a narration, into what your more classic of your film noir is at that time. So I guess where I'm going is it film noir because of the style and the look, and was it called that in the 40s, or is it something that we have actually labeled in now because of the way that the style and the way that the mystery and the crime, is it something that we've actually cataloged? Like, I'd be curious to know if that's what they called it back then. So no, wait. Yeah. So just keep that on your little burner. I know we also talked about some of the fight coordination. I thought the fighting was hilarious. It was very choreographed. It was very, like, you could tell they weren't even connecting in some of the scenes. I think the scene where they beat up Humphrey Bogart in the alley, I was like, yeah, are they like a bunch of like gymnasts? Because it just seemed really weird and it was very awkward. But again, I believe it was just the time. But I don't know. I've seen some, like, if you watch something like State Fair, there's a big fist fight in that, and it's way more real than that scene. So I don't know. I don't know if it was maybe something with Humphrey Bogart, or if it was just the way that it was shot, or it just seemed very odd. So
I have an answer.
Well, hold that on your burner, because you're not going to burn my 15 minutes, mister.
All right.
Oh, is it the film noir one?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the other question that I kind of have to the group also is, we talked about how a lot of the film noir that we're used to, women are very, the very glistening, starry-eyed, helpless damsels in distress type women who just want to get with the lead roles, and that's pretty much all they're good for. And both of these movies had more of a stronger female character. So it bends the question: are these two movies actually pushing that femme fatale noir that is more common today, where you have that strong lead character? And I mean, were they actually did they actually build something they didn't even realize that they were building? Because I felt that we had some really good female characters that weren't just dumb and starry-eyed like most of the time, like what we have talked about. There was plenty of it, but most of your main females weren't completely dim-witted and blah kind of thing. So here we go. Double Indemnity. The only thing, I liked the story. I enjoyed the movie. Overall, it was fun and exciting to watch. I think I didn't enjoy it as much as The Big Sleep was, because I figured it out like the minute she came to his office and they started talking about insurance. Now, does that mean it's because of our time and I've seen a lot of movies and I figured it out because it's like, oh, okay, we're going to do an insurance fraud. It's okay. I got this figured out. Did they not? Were they able to pull that off in the 40s because it wasn't as common, or people were like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I had never thought about insurance fraud. I'm not sure. The Big Sleep, I know we complained about the complexity of the story. The complexity of the story was very much so. There was a lot of complexity to it. There was a lot going on. I found it more engaging. I had to pay attention more. I wanted to listen to the dialogue more. As a roundabout, I really enjoyed the movie much easier. So you've got your questions. Let's have it.
Oh God.
You guys want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Okay. All right, I'll try to jump out here. So when I think of film noir, of course, I don't know the origins of it, but when I think of film noir, I think of something gritty. It has crime, sex involved, deception, usually someone who's on the side of the law, a cop, an investigator, a detective, etc. Multiple women, people crossing and double crossing each other, snappy dialogue. And for me now, looking back at it, I think a lot of people have tried to make noir type films, but not in black and white. So I don't think they necessarily have to be in black and white to fall into the film noir, but it's a very classic hallmark of the genre. I'm no film historian from the 40s, but I think that you see in Big Sleep, they know they have two big movie stars, and so they're focusing on them a lot. And as we've watched older movies for this podcast, you see that there are really two, maybe three major actors, and the rest of the supporting cast are character actors, stage actors, people you don't really know, and their quality varies wildly on how good they are at actually acting. That's the thing we don't have as much these days. Of a lot more actors available. I don't know if I'd call them better, but they don't have that look of old movies where some of the side characters, you're like, what is this person doing in a movie? Do they know they're in a movie? Because this is weird. Big Sleep looked beautiful, well directed. Humphrey Bogart, tons of charisma, delivered the lines great. Couldn't tell he was drunk most of the time, so that's good for him. That makes him a good actor. The fight scene was laughable, but I guess if you're throwing punches at a drunk Humphrey Bogart, you're probably gonna be real careful. I don't know. But then the guy walks up and says, "That's the worst beating I've ever seen in my life." And I'm like, "You're out of your fucking mind, buddy."
And I've been around, is what he said.
You
you
haven't seen many beatings.
You haven't seen. So this is your first one, then, is what you're saying. Double Indemnity, I really dug. I liked the story. It was simple, clever, nice and twisty-turny. Some of the figuring out the crime seemed like, oh, Keyes has to have this sense, this weird feeling. It was sort of like so the movie can happen, because I thought the plan of the murder was actually pretty. It was nice and clean, and I think they did pretty well covering it up. It just so happenstance that they get a hold of that weird dude from Oregon and call him down and kind of screw everything up. But I still think you go to court. I think you could probably, that'd be hard to prove. He gets on the stand and starts talking about, I was from Medford, and Medford they do this and Medford they do that. The jury's not going to believe him. So I think you probably just still take that to court if you're not a crazy lady. I don't know, man. It was enjoyable to watch these movies. I like film noir. These are two great examples of the genre. Very enjoyable. I would watch them again easily. I would show them to people as an example of the genre for sure. And man, I really dug this week. I love watching movies that I've never seen either of these movies before. So it was really cool to see them for the first time and be like, man, these are so enjoyable. These movies are like 70 years old now. And they're still so enjoyable from a story standpoint, a filmmaking standpoint. It's great. It's like timeless. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that, there's something to be said that like the good movies will endure. They are good for a reason. There's, they kind of just from top to bottom, the acting, the scene design, the directing, everything is so, and the script, everything's so great that there's a reason people still watch them, And if you pull up a list of the top film noir movies of all time, these two are usually in the top 2 or 3 slots. So, I love both these movies a lot. I had actually seen Double Indemnity, not seen Big Sleep before we did this. And I liked Big Sleep a lot more. Double Indemnity is a really fun ride. And I think if I was introducing somebody to film noir for the first time, I'd probably start with Double Indemnity because it's a little bit simpler story. I don't want anybody to get turned off from film noir because they're like, well, wait, who the hell was Eddie Burns? I'm like, there wasn't a guy named Eddie Burns in this movie. So I think that's that's kind of the direction that I would go. One thing we didn't talk about either, I did not understand the thing where Humphrey Bogart asked the girl about wearing her glasses. I don't know what happened there. Like he was like, "You're gonna keep those glasses on?" It's like, okay, well, you're either definitely having sex or you have a thing with girls in glasses, and I have a thing for girls with glasses. So I was just like, Humphrey, what are you doing, man?
It's the thing. The girl takes her glasses off, puts her hair down, she becomes beautiful.
I know, and he was just like,
yeah.
And then it's like a
you
new
didn't
girl.
know before then.
Yeah, and he like a new girl walked in. He's like, "Whoa, hey, where'd you come
And
from?"
if she turns
like,
around and she's like, hey,
he's like, "Are you drunk now?" So
Yeah, I think
5 minutes.
I think as far as film noir is concerned, for me anyway, it's an extremely unique genre of films in that I'm not sure that you can actually ever make a film noir again. You can make things that are very similar to it, but film noir was so tied to the time that those films were made. That you can make an homage to it, you can make a reference to it, but I don't think you can ever make a film noir again. You can make comedies, you can make dramas, you can make maybe even westerns. Westerns and film noir are kind of in the same category. But one of the interesting things about film noir is that it really captured the zeitgeist of the time. It was a dark time historically, and film noir reflected that history. And maybe as we go through a similar time, I don't think that film noir will ever you can actually ever really do another film noir. And I think that's one of the things that's unique about it. It's tied very specifically to a certain point in time.
Are you saying you can't do a film noir that takes place today, or are you saying you couldn't do one at all? Like, could I do a film noir movie that takes place in the 1940s?
No, I don't know. I guess if you wanted to try to replicate that, but I don't think it would actually be a film noir. I'm not sure it would fall into that category.
I don't know.
It falls into some other category that gets referenced, neo noir, and I think there are some modern films.
Fair enough.
That definitely reference that, and one of my favorites, Blade Runner, I consider a neo noir, and it very much, it's set in the future, but it's got a very retro feel when it comes to costumes and sets and even industrial design and that kind of thing. And it has a 40s feel to it. I mean, but I don't think we could ever really say that that's a film noir.
So is that
because it's so specifically tied to that period of time.
But it's
and like I said, westerns might fall in that same category.
Is neo-noir just thrown around though as like, we don't know how to categorize it? Well, it's kind of a neo-noir, so we can just give that that.
I don't know. If I were to list off like the three best film noir movies, it would be these two and LA Confidential. I can't separate, even though it was done recently. I can't separate it from these, it's in color, and it hits all of those.
It's not
notes.
Black and white. It's not.
From the
40s. It's not set in the 40s.
But
it's
set in the 40s. It's set in the 40s.
Is it set in the 40s?
Yes.
Yeah. But
so
again, they have the femme fatale and the mise en scene and the dramatic lighting that they use, and the story of very much crime-based film in Hollywood with a assorted cast of characters. I mean, it really, to me, is like, I don't think it's easy to do a film noir movie, but I still think you could do it.
Actually,
so you guys are talking about
it's the 1950s.
Is it?
Yes.
You guys are talking about my opening question, which was, are these movies considered film noir then, or is it a label we have given them because of the style that it is in?
I can answer.
I know, and Mike, you're going to be able to
Mike
answer when we're done. Calm down. We're not done yet.
Mike has the answer. I have some background on it too to explain where it came from.
The only other thing Gabe had mentioned earlier about the smartness of audiences. So I want to touch on that just smally. That it's very
smally.
It's very interesting to me that Double Indemnity actually was nominated for 7 Oscars, and The Big Sleep was not.
I don't.
So does that? No,
Citizen Kane didn't win. I find it's irrelevant.
But my point is was Double Indemnity actually liked because it was simpler and the audience was dumber, which was the question at hand when Gabe asked it, or I mean, why was that more liked at the time than The Big Sleep? Is it because of the
That's our alarm. That's it.
The simplicity of the story versus the more complex story? That was the question, and so it made me wonder because there were more awards involved. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it holds merit.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
I know I ask the big questions. I make
I
it
would
hard.
Can I vote first, Mike?
I know from the reviews that they received mixed reviews back then. So
Okay.
Sure.
Which one did?
the Big Sleep.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I vote first, Mike?
Why is that?
Just let me vote first.
Okay, Kyle.
Okay, so at the beginning of my vote, I'd like to preface my
No,
vote by
okay,
saying,
hold on.
Gabe,
Hold on.
I'm with you about noir being a vintage of the 1940s. I was
damn
trying
it.
to get that in, but Andrew wouldn't stop talking. All right, so now my actual real vote. Big Sleep is prettier. I think it has better acting in it. But I think it's let down because the story is not the most important part of the movie. It is seeing the movie stars, and to me that becomes a little tiresome, and I'd rather follow the story from beginning to end like they did in Double Indemnity. But noir twist, I'm still going to vote for The Big Sleep.
All right.
Woo! Twisty.
What?
Andrew.
I'm confused. Can
He
you do a
voted for
diagram
the-
of that
he-
for me, Kyle? Of your vote?
He voted for The Big Sleep.
Tom will do it.
I'm confused.
Andrew.
All I'm saying is I don't know if audiences are stupider or if they just enjoyed something simpler. That's all I was throwing out there. And you can take that for however you want, Tom. And Gabe, I was just trying to play off of your question that you asked earlier. You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
And I picked The Big Sleep.
Tom.
This is
funny.
like those 1-800 collect commercials where we had a baby, it's the boy.
Yeah.
You get in there and you're trying to sneak in information with your votes.
God, you brought up We Had a Baby, It's a Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
another thing that can never be again.
Exactly.
That is vintage 90s. You
Yeah.
can make a parody of that. You can make homages to that. Yeah.
Tom.
Well, film noir actually came about. I'm going to vote for The Big Sleep.
Gabe.
But I will tell you, I was very close to voting for Double Indemnity because I do really enjoy that movie, and I feel bad I hadn't voted for it, but I'm not sure how I could rectify voting 3 times for Big Sleep and then giving overall to the other movies. So,
Understood.
Don't think about it. That's what I do.
oh,
Yeah. Don't worry about it too much.
Gabe.
There's no auditing here. I am going to go with the Big Sleep because I think the dialogue and the acting were superior.
All right. The term film noir is French for black film, literal, or dark film, closer meaning, was first applied to Hollywood films by French critic Nino Frank in 1946, but was unrecognized by most American film industry professionals of that area. Cinema historians and critics define the category retrospectively before the notion was widely adopted in the 70s. Most of the classic film noir were referred to as melodramas. Whether film noir qualifies as a distinct genre is a matter of ongoing debate among scholars.
sorry, that's not no. Sorry.
And Tom,
But
just so you know about LA Confidential, it is still
Yes.
considered a film noir since it takes place then, because years active for film noir are considered the 1920s to the late 50s.
There you go.
That's a pretty generous one, but definitely. I mean, my recommendation for tonight was filmed in 1949, which I would think was kind of late
Nope.
noirish, but or like late 50s seems like pretty late for film noir to me.
They were still doing it. So, yeah, there you go.
So,
And that's I would also argue with the femme fatale noir as well then. That's something that people are putting on it, and people argue all the time that femme fatale is not actually a film genre.
Oh,
And
right.
I don't know if I would agree with that, but
I don't- yeah.
that's a different day.
That
don't
is a different day.
right.
According to Lauren Bacall, production was so much fun on The Big Sleep that they got a memo from Jack Warner saying, quote, "Word has reached me that you are having fun on set. This must stop." End quote.
What?
I thought that was a great piece of trivia. Due to strict,
I wonder why.
So there was a lot of trivia. Also, they actually wrapped filming. Bacall and Bogart got married, and at one point they went back and did some more shooting of the film.
Huh.
And I believe Hawks was not wanting to do that, and he actually told them that there's to be no kissy on set while they were on set. I thought that was great. Due to strict wartime food rationing, policemen were stationed in the store where a scene with Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck was filmed. To make sure nobody on the Double Indemnity crew was tempted to take any of the food, Paramount released publicity stills showing 4 policemen in the store with McMurray and Stanwyck.
Wow.
Crazy.
So, just can I do like a little film noir background?
Sure, go ahead.
Just take a minute. So in the 1920s and 30s, German expressionism was really big. You got movies like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu. And then with the rise of nationalism and the Nazis, a lot of those German directors fled Germany and came here and brought that dark, high contrasty style. And that's where we got directors like Fritz Lang and Otto Preminger and Billy Wilder, who also came over from Germany. And so those guys brought that unique style in, and it took off here. And that's where that style of 1930s, 1940s, black and white, that's where the film noir came from, was these German directors that brought their art installations with them.
Huh.
It's interesting that it has a French name for the genre.
Yeah.
Well, so it built up.
Primarily German.
Yeah, because it kind of happened organically, and Hollywood grasped onto it because it was making a ton of money on it. And then suddenly people looked around and were like, shit, we've had like 30 of these movies in the last 4 years. We need to call it something. So thank you, Hitler.
Nobody cuts that out. And uses it.
Without the rise of Nazism, we would not have the film noir as a American film genre. He's a fucking prick, but I just
All right. Well, with that, let's move on to your recommendations for this month.
Cinesmack does not honor or represent anything with the Nazi regime.
Oh, boy.
I think that was a funny joke.
Kyle, you start us off for recommendations.
Time for my recommendations. All right, so I'm going to recommend what I think is my favorite film noir movie. It's based on one of my favorite books as well, and it stars Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade. If you've not seen The Maltese Falcon, you should. It's really good. I love it. Well, did I steal your...
That's a great movie.
We've done did that actually against Blade Runner, and fun fact, I have a Maltese Falcon in the office with me.
Nice. Yeah, Maltese Falcon, a great example of film noir. The book itself, too, if you haven't read it by Dashiell Hammett, is really fun. A great ride, and was one of my favorite books for a really, really long time. So check it out, man. Watch some more of these film noirs. They're really good.
They're fun.
Yeah, they are. Good pick, Kyle. Tom?
So I'm going to depart. I have tons of film noir movies that I want to recommend, but I'm going to recommend something that everybody on Facebook is recommending. It has like murder. It has murder, attempted murder anyway, and tigers. It's Tiger King's the documentary on Netflix that everybody's watching. I don't know why I need to recommend it because you probably already watched it. It is of just an incredibly fascinating look into this crazy world of people that raise big cats. And as a documentary, as a story that's told to you through, just footage that they've captured, it's really amazing. It leaves you with a lot of questions about what's skewed and what's biased and that kind of thing, but it is a really fun ride. So anyway, I recommend Tiger King. So you know what? There's a button on your TV, and you can turn the color down. and you can watch it in black and white. Joe Exotic's outfits won't be so garish, and you're just one step closer to Netflix, because it has a femme fatale either, or it's closer to film noir because it has a femme fatale, and so
that bitch Carol Baskins.
Yeah.
Just a shout out, I want to write on Tom's recommendation. Check out a podcast called Over My Dead Body. Last year they did a series on Joe Exotic. So that's how I first learned about it before the show on Netflix. Gabe?
Well, I'm going to go with an actual film noir. I'm going to recommend The Third Man, starring Orson Welles and Joseph Cotton. Oh. And it falls very squarely into the film noir category.
Yes, it does.
The cinematography and the lighting, just fantastic. There's some really interesting stuff. There's not a lot of camera movement, a little bit, but not a lot. But the kind of the camera angles and choices and the dark alleys and sewers and all that are just totally film noir at its finest. And also, it's famous for its soundtrack, which is played on an instrument called a zither. Now, I personally have mixed feelings about the soundtrack. It's interesting. It's different. It's really not like anything you've heard before. But sometimes I felt like tonally it didn't fit, because it is a dark film, but sometimes the zither music didn't seem to fit with it. So I don't know if any of you've seen it. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the zither music in it. But it is a really well done film noir film. So.
All right.
One of the things about that music, it starts on the opening credits, and you're like, oh, this is fun, this is different. And then 10 minutes in, you're going, oh, we're going to fucking do this the whole time. Okay.
Yeah. And again, like the tonality of it was, at times didn't seem to match.
Yeah. Hey, it's a murder.
It was almost a little too, upbeat. And I was trying to figure out if that was intentional, if it was if we were supposed to if that was supposed to be some sort of a parody or I can't think of the right term, but like we weren't supposed to take this as seriously as it was coming across. But I'm not sure that was intentional. But it is very famous for that, because it's I'm not sure I know of any other film that uses zither as its primary instrument.
That's true.
Maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, maybe this was the first and the last.
All right, thanks, Gabe.
But it's a great film.
Andrew?
Well, I'm going to recommend what I would consider a more modern version of film noir, what I guess Gabe would call the neo-noir. However, the movie does take place in 1939, even though it was shot in 2004. And that would be Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. And I love this movie. I think it's great. It's a mix of science fiction and steampunk and kind of that 1939, 1940s kind of feel of that film noir with mystery and a private investigator. And it is just a really great comic booky kind of film noir, I guess, is the way I like to put it. So Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. My pick is actually one that I had never seen until about 15 years ago. And the way I found out about this movie was Tom and I were teaching a Boy Scout troop about film and showing them how to operate cameras and such. And Tom had put together some clips trying to show camera movements and things like that. And there was one scene on there, which was the beginning of this film, and it's all one shot. And after I saw it, I was like, I have to watch this movie. Now,
I know what you're talking about.
Do you?
I think so.
It stars Charlton Heston, Janet Leigh, and Orson Welles, and it's directed by Orson Welles and written by Orson Welles. It's called Touch of Evil. If you guys have not seen this, I would highly recommend it. It is also a great film noir, and the opening shot is just amazing if you think about it. What they had to do back then in order to get that shot done. And if you don't want to watch the movie, at least look up that beginning shot, the opening shot of Touch of Evil. So check it out, 1958, Touch of Evil.
Yeah, that opening shot is probably as long as many modern movies.
It's amazing what they had to work with at the time. It's a stunning shot.
It is.
Think about moving what was probably a giant camera around. Yeah, the way that they did.
Mm-hmm. But that's what Orson Welles did, right? Like that's what Orson Welles did. He pushed the boundaries of what you could do with the gear back then.
Oh yeah.
Hitchcock had a movie called Rope.
Oh yeah,
it's all one takes, and they built the whole set on wheels so they could move stuff around and wheel this giant camera everywhere. That's just crazy, man. Doing it back then. Now it'd be so much easier to do.
But it's really incredible. The one thing about Touch of Evil though is that I'm not sure I'm a big fan of Charlton Heston in that role, and it's one of those things. Doesn't he play a Hispanic character?
Yes, Mike Vargas.
They really throw the races.
Yeah,
they throw the races around.
Mexican narcotics officer Ramon Miguel.
And so
Vargas.
they kind of darken him up a little bit. And
yeah.
It's a great movie, but that to modern audiences, I think that's probably a little off.
Thanks, Gabe. Thanks. Yeah. Appreciate it, Gabe.
No, it's great. It's a great movie. Definitely watch that first scene. It
All
is
right.
great.
Let's poke the monkey, find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is the Big Sleep.
Wow. I thought it was going to go the other way.
Yes, sirs. All right. Where can people find you? Maybe invite you to get wet, Kyle.
Well, that's very forward of you, but I am interested. You can at me at Tyrannosaurus Sex, at Jerksitten. I'm still offering those services. Social distancing has slowed things down, so unless you have a pulley, a long rope, or a huge belt, it's going to be hard for us to do this. But I am booking June and July, appointments. If something happens to you between now and then, you get a full refund, whoever your beneficiary is. So it's not a big deal.
All right.
But yes, I would like to get wet.
I didn't have any problem
from a distance.
I didn't have any problem with the 6 foot distancing when I booked my appointment. So.
Well, you did have a comically long cane that people would use to pull someone off stage at a play, and you had a belt on the end of that. So it wasn't that. I mean, arm's length is fine. You can be safe and have fun.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Tom?
I don't know. I usually say something funny right here, but I have a headache. So people can usually find me laying in bed moaning about this headache I have. I'm on Facebook and Vimeo. I guess, I'm at home, I work a little bit outside the house, but mostly I'm just working from home. So like everybody else.
All right. Gabe?
You can look up our films on onegenomeshort.com.
All right. Andrew?
The easiest way is just to go out to the wonderful ArizonaInkStudios.com and check out all of our films and even links to this wonderful podcast and links to all of the wonderful social media that we are on so you can see what's going on. That's Arizona Ink, INK, Studios.com.
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also search Southsider Studios on YouTube. And the boys and I would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. It helps us grow an audience. So tell your friends, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmac@gmail.com. Let us know if you like the 15-minute rule. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmac. And to lead into Tom's joke, from May, 2 historical satires goose step into the ring as the great dictator takes on Jojo Rabbit.
Oh my God, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, this will be fun.
For Tom.
Oh gosh.
Kyle.
Just keep interrupting Mike.
Andrew, Gabe, and myself. Thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
You know what just happened? I got a bottle of pretty good rye in my pocket. I'd a lot rather get wet in here.
Well. Looks like we're closed for the rest of the afternoon.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.